The morning fog hung thick over Fort Richardson as Colonel Marcus Hartwell strutted across the base parking lot, his chest puffed with the pride that came from 23 years of military service. His polished boots clicked against the asphalt in a rhythm that announced his presence to anyone within earshot. Hartwell had earned his position through grit, determination, and an unwavering belief that respect was something that had to be earned through years of dedication to the uniform. As he approached the main administrative building, his attention was drawn to a commotion near the visitors' parking area. A small crowd had gathered around what appeared to be a broken-down sedan, its hood propped open and steam rising from the engine. Behind the wheel sat a young woman, probably in her early 30s. Wearing casual civilian clothes, a simple blue sweater and jeans. She looked frustrated as she spoke on her cell phone, occasionally glancing at the gathering crowd of concerned soldiers. "Ma'am, do you need assistance?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the junior enlisted men who had stopped to help. The woman smiled gratefully. "Thank you, yes. My car decided to give up on me right here at the gate. I'm supposed to be somewhere important in about 10 minutes. Colonel Hartwell approached the scene with his characteristic swagger, immediately taking charge of the situation as he always did. "What seems to be the problem here?" he barked, causing the younger soldiers to straighten up reflexively. "Sir, this lady's car broke down just outside the gate," Rodriguez explained quickly. Hartwell looked at the woman dismissively, taking in her civilian clothes and youthful appearance. In his mind, she was clearly just another military spouse who had gotten herself into trouble and expected the soldiers to bail her out. He had seen it countless times before, dependents who thought their connection to the military entitled them to special treatment. "Miss, this is a military installation," Hartwell said curtly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "We can't have broken-down vehicles cluttering up our entrance. You'll need to call a tow truck and move this vehicle immediately." The woman looked up at him with surprise, clearly taken aback by his harsh tone. "I understand that, but I was hoping someone might know a quick fix. I really do need to get inside for an important meeting." Hartwell scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. "An important meeting? Let me guess. You're here to complain about base housing or discuss your husband's deployment schedule? Listen, honey, we're not a roadside assistance service. This is a serious military facility where real work gets done." The soldiers around them shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension in the air. Sergeant Rodriguez looked particularly uneasy, as if he wanted to say something but didn't dare contradict a colonel. "Actually, sir," the woman began calmly, "I'm not a dependent. I'm here on official business." "Official business?" Hartwell laughed mockingly. "What kind of official business could someone like you possibly have here? Are you a secretary, a contractor? Whatever it is, I'm sure it can wait until you get your transportation situation sorted out." The woman's expression remained composed, but those standing closest to her could see a slight tightening around her eyes. "I appreciate your concern about base security, Colonel, but I assure you my business here is quite important." "I doubt that very much," Hartwell replied with a condescending smile. "You know what your problem is? You people think that just because you have some tangential connection to the military, you deserve special treatment. Well, let me tell you something. Rank means something here. Experience means something. And I've got both." He pointed to the silver eagles on his uniform collar with obvious pride. "These birds didn't come easy. 23 years of blood, sweat, and dedication earned me this position. I've commanded troops in 3 different combat zones, managed budgets worth millions of dollars, and made decisions that affected thousands of lives. So when I tell you that your little car problem isn't our responsibility, you can take that to the bank." The woman nodded slowly, still maintaining her remarkable composure despite the colonel's increasingly hostile tone. "I can see that you take your responsibilities very seriously, Colonel. That's admirable." "You're damn right I do," Hartwell continued, warming to his subject. Too many people these days think the military owes them something just for existing. They don't understand what real sacrifice looks like. They've never had to make the hard choices, never had to lead men and women into dangerous situations, never had to answer to their superiors for every decision they make. Private Johnson, who had been quietly observing the exchange, glanced nervously at his watch. "Sir, should I call the motor pool to see if they can help with the vehicle?" "Absolutely not," Hartwell snapped. "Our mechanics have real work to do, not fix some civilians' personal transportation problems. This lady can call AAA like everyone else." The woman pulled out her identification card, holding it out toward Hartwell. "Perhaps if you looked at my credentials, you might understand why I need to get inside." Hartwell waved dismissively without even glancing at the card. "I don't care what kind of civilian ID you have. Could be from the Pentagon, could be from the local grocery store. Doesn't matter to me. What matters is that you're disrupting operations at my base with your personal problems." "Your base?" the woman asked quietly, raising an eyebrow. "That's right," Hartwell declared proudly. "I'm the senior officer on duty this morning, which means everything that happens here is my responsibility. And I'm not about to let some civilian's car trouble become a military problem." Several more soldiers had gathered to watch the increasingly uncomfortable scene. Among them was Captain Morrison, who had been walking by when she noticed the crowd. She approached cautiously, sensing the tension in the air. "Is everything all right here, sir?" Morrison asked diplomatically. "Just dealing with a minor civilian situation, Captain," Hartwell replied dismissively. "Nothing that concerns you. This lady here thinks her car problems are somehow our emergency." Captain Morrison glanced at the woman, who was now studying Hartwell with an expression that seemed almost analytical, as if she were taking mental notes of everything he said and did. "Have you considered that she might be here for a legitimate reason?" Morrison suggested carefully. "I'm sure she thinks her reason is legitimate," Hartwell replied with a patronizing laugh. "They all do. But I've been doing this long enough to spot the difference between real military business and civilian drama, and this, Captain, is definitely civilian drama." The woman finally stood up from her car, closing her cell phone with a decisive snap. She was shorter than Hartwell had initially thought, which only reinforced his assumption that she was harmless and unimportant. Her demeanor remained calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes now that hadn't been there before, a quiet confidence that seemed oddly out of place, given the circumstances. "Colonel, I appreciate your dedication to maintaining security and order," she said evenly. "It's clear that you take your responsibilities very seriously, and that's exactly the kind of leadership the military needs." Hartwell preened at what he interpreted as praise, completely missing the subtle undertone in her voice. "Well, finally someone who understands how things work around here. Yes, ma'am. Responsibility is what separates the wheat from the chaff in this business." "Indeed it is," she agreed. "And I'm sure your superiors appreciate having someone so thorough in charge of situations like this." "They certainly do," Hartwell boasted. "In fact, just last week I received a commendation for my handling of a security incident. Not everyone has what it takes to make the tough decisions, you know. It requires experience, wisdom, and the kind of authority that can only come from years of proven leadership." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "Years of proven leadership. Yes, that's very important. Tell me, Colonel, how long have you been stationed here at Fort Richardson?" 2 years, Hartwell replied proudly. "Best 2 years of my career, I might add. This base has never run more smoothly than it has under my watch." "I'm sure that's true," the woman said softly. "It must be quite a responsibility, overseeing such an important installation." "It is indeed," Hartwell agreed, completely oblivious to the growing unease among the soldiers around him. "But someone has to do it. And I've never been one to back down from a challenge. That's what real leadership looks like. Stepping up when others step back." As the conversation continued, None of them noticed the black sedan with government plates that had just pulled up to the main gate, or the fact that the guards there had suddenly snapped to attention with an urgency that suggested someone very important had just arrived. The black sedan at the main gate had attracted the attention of several guards, who were now engaged in what appeared to be urgent radio communications. But Colonel Hartwell remained focused on his impromptu lecture about military hierarchy and proper protocol, completely unaware of the activity behind him. "You see," Hartwell continued, gesturing broadly as he spoke, "most civilians don't understand the complexity of running a military installation. It's not just about following orders, though that's certainly important. It's about understanding the bigger picture, strategic thinking, the ability to see how every small decision affects the overall mission." The woman listened patiently, occasionally nodding at appropriate moments, but her eyes had begun to wander toward the main gate where the activity was increasing. More guards had appeared, and they seemed to be preparing for something significant. "Take this situation, for example," Hartwell continued, pointing at her broken-down car. "To you, this is just an inconvenience, but to someone with my experience, I can see the potential security implications. What if this is a deliberate attempt to block our entrance? What if there are hostile actors using this as a distraction while they probe our defenses elsewhere?" Captain Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, with respect, it looks like a simple mechanical failure." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that gets people killed, Captain," Hartwell snapped. "You see a broken car, I see a potential threat vector. That's the difference between a seasoned commander and someone who still has a lot to learn." The woman raised an eyebrow. "That's a very comprehensive approach to security, Colonel. I imagine your superiors appreciate such thorough analysis of potential threats." "They absolutely do," Hartwell replied, completely missing the subtle irony in her tone. "In fact, I've been told that my security assessments are some of the most detailed and accurate they've ever seen. It comes from experience, real field experience, not just classroom theory." At that moment, Sergeant Rodriguez's radio crackled to life with an urgent message. "All units, be advised that VIP arrival is imminent. Repeat, VIP arrival is imminent. All personnel are to stand by for further instructions." Hartwell frowned at the interruption. "What's all this commotion about? Did anyone inform me about a VIP visit?" Rodriguez checked his radio log quickly. "Sir, I don't see any notification that was sent to your office specifically, but it looks like this was scheduled through higher headquarters." "Higher headquarters?" Hartwell scoffed. "Well, whoever it is, they picked a hell of a time to show up. We've got this civilian situation to deal with first." He turned back to the woman. "See what I mean? This is exactly why we need to get your car moved. Important military business waits for no one." The woman glanced toward the main gate again, where the activity was becoming even more pronounced. "Perhaps I should try to resolve this quickly so I don't interfere with your VIP visit." "Good thinking," Hartwell said approvingly. "Finally, some common sense. Yes, you need to get this vehicle out of here before whoever's coming arrives. We can't have them thinking we allow civilians to just park wherever they please." Captain Morrison was studying her radio display with a puzzled expression. "Sir, this is strange. The VIP notification doesn't include any details about who's arriving. Usually we get complete briefings for visits like this." "Probably some Pentagon bureaucrat coming to waste our time with paperwork and regulations," Hartwell said dismissively. "They never understand how things work in the real world. They sit in their comfortable offices making policies that we have to implement without any consideration for practical realities." The woman seemed to find this comment particularly interesting. "You've had difficult experiences with Pentagon officials before?" "Oh, don't get me started," Hartwell said, warming to one of his favorite topics. "These desk jockeys come out here thinking they know everything about military operations because they've read some reports and attended some briefings, but they've never actually commanded troops in the field. They've never had to make split-second decisions with lives on the line. They live in a world of theories and policies, while we deal with reality. That must be frustrating, the woman said sympathetically. You have no idea, Hartwell continued enthusiastically. Just last month, we had some big shot from Washington come through here, trying to tell us how to run our training exercises. This person had never served in combat, had never even been deployed overseas, but somehow felt qualified to critique methods that have been proven effective in real-world situations. Private Johnson appeared at Hartwell's elbow, looking nervous. Sir, I just got word from the gate. They're saying the VIP will be here in less than 5 minutes, and they want all senior personnel to be prepared for immediate briefing. Immediate briefing? Hartwell looked annoyed. What kind of briefing? About what? I don't know, sir. They just said to be ready. The woman checked her watch and sighed. I really do need to get inside soon. My meeting is supposed to start any minute. Meeting with whom? Hartwell asked suspiciously. I thought you said this was official business. What kind of official business? The kind that requires punctuality, she replied calmly. I'm sure you understand the importance of being on time for important appointments. Hartwell studied her more carefully now, noticing details he had missed before. Her posture was straighter than he had initially observed, and despite her casual clothes, there was something about the way she carried herself that seemed almost military. But he quickly dismissed these thoughts. Plenty of military spouses picked up mannerisms from their husbands. Look, miss, he said with exaggerated patience, I'm trying to be reasonable here, but you're not being very cooperative. If you really do have some kind of appointment on base, then you should have arranged proper transportation. Showing up in a broken-down civilian vehicle doesn't exactly inspire confidence in your professionalism. You're absolutely right about professionalism being important, she agreed. In fact, I'd say it's one of the most crucial qualities for anyone in a position of responsibility. Exactly, Hartwell exclaimed. Finally, someone who gets it. Professionalism, attention to detail, respect for protocol, these aren't just nice ideas, they're the foundation of effective military operations. The radio chatter around them was becoming more intense, and several more soldiers had arrived on the scene. Captain Morrison was looking increasingly uncomfortable as she tried to manage the growing crowd while keeping an eye on the situation at the main gate. Sir, Morrison said carefully, maybe we should consider moving this discussion to a less conspicuous location, with the VIP arriving soon. Nonsense, Hartwell replied curtly. We're handling a security issue, Captain. This takes priority. Besides, whoever's coming will probably want to see how we deal with situations like this. It'll be a good demonstration of our operational readiness. The woman exchanged a meaningful look with Captain Morrison, who seemed to be picking up on something that Hartwell was completely missing. Colonel, Morrison said hesitantly, I really think we should... Captain, I've been handling situations like this since before you were commissioned. Hartwell interrupted sharply. I know what I'm doing. Now, ma'am, he turned back to the woman, I'm going to give you one more chance to cooperate here. Either you get this vehicle moved immediately, or I'm going to have it towed at your expense. The woman looked at him steadily for a long moment, and something in her expression had changed. The polite deference was still there, but underneath it was a steely quality that hadn't been present before. Colonel Hartwell, she said quietly, using his name for the first time, I want you to remember this conversation very carefully. Remember it? Hartwell laughed. Trust me, I've had this same conversation with dozens of entitled civilians over the years. You're not as unique as you think you are. I'm sure I'm not, she replied softly. But this particular conversation might be more significant than you realize. Before Hartwell could respond, his radio erupted with activity. All personnel, VIP has arrived at main gate. Repeat, VIP on base. All senior officers report to headquarters immediately for briefing. Hartwell grabbed his radio with obvious irritation. This is Colonel Hartwell. I'm currently dealing with a security situation near the main entrance. Can this briefing wait 15 minutes? The response came back immediately, and the urgency in the dispatcher's voice was unmistakable. Negative, sir. All senior officers are to report immediately. Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha, Hartwell repeated, his confidence faltering slightly. Priority Alpha was reserved for only the most critical situations. Visits from extremely high-ranking officials or emergency circumstances that required immediate command attention. The woman was watching his reaction with interest, and for the first time since the conversation began, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. It sounds like your VIP might be more important than you initially thought, Colonel. Colonel Hartwell hesitated for the first time since the conversation began, clearly torn between his desire to continue asserting his authority over the civilian woman and the urgent radio call demanding his immediate presence. The Priority Alpha designation had shaken his confidence more than he cared to admit. "This isn't over," he told the woman sternly, pointing a finger at her broken-down car. "I want this vehicle gone by the time I get back from this briefing. Do you understand me?" "Oh, I understand perfectly," she replied, that enigmatic smile becoming slightly more pronounced. "You should probably hurry along to your briefing, Colonel. You wouldn't want to keep anyone waiting." Hartwell turned and began marching toward the headquarters building, his stride still confident, but not quite as cocky as it had been moments before. Behind him, the crowd of soldiers began to disperse, though several remained near the woman and her car. Captain Morrison lingered, studying the woman with growing curiosity. "Ma'am, I have to ask, who exactly are you? Because something about this whole situation doesn't feel right." The woman looked at Morrison with approval. "You have good instincts, Captain. That's an admirable quality in an officer." "That doesn't answer my question," Morrison pressed gently. "No, it doesn't," the woman agreed. "But I think your Colonel Hartwell is about to get all the answers he needs." Inside the headquarters building, Hartwell burst through the doors of the main conference room. Straightening his uniform and preparing to meet whatever Pentagon bureaucrat had descended upon his base. The room was filled with senior staff members, all standing at attention and facing the front of the room, where a large presentation screen had been lowered. "Sir, Colonel Hartwell reporting as ordered," he announced loudly, assuming his usual commanding presence. Major General Patricia Williams, the base commander, turned to face him with an expression that was equal parts surprise and concern. "Marcus, where the hell have you been? We've been trying to reach you for the past 20 minutes." "I was handling a security situation, ma'am," Hartwell replied confidently. "A civilian with a broken-down vehicle was blocking our main entrance. I was ensuring that our operational readiness wasn't compromised." General Williams frowned. "A security situation? What kind of security situation?" "Nothing major, ma'am. Just some entitled civilian who thought her personal problems were our responsibility. I handled it according to protocol." The general's frown deepened. "Marcus, please tell me you're not talking about the woman with the car near the main gate." "That's exactly who I'm talking about," Hartwell replied, still oblivious to the growing tension in the room. "Some civilian who claimed to have important business here. Probably a contractor or a dependent trying to throw her weight around." The silence that followed was deafening. Every officer in the room was staring at Hartwell with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. General Williams closed her eyes briefly, as if trying to summon patience from somewhere deep within herself. "Colonel Hartwell," she said slowly, her voice carrying a deadly calm that every military officer learns to recognize as a warning sign. "The woman you've been harassing for the past 30 minutes is General Elizabeth Thornton." The words hit Hartwell like a physical blow. General Elizabeth Thornton, 4-star general, one of only a handful of women ever to achieve that rank, and currently serving as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations at the Pentagon. She was a living legend in the military, known for her brilliant strategic mind, her impeccable leadership record, and her ability to cut through bureaucratic nonsense with laser-like precision. That's impossible, Hartwell stammered, his face draining of color. She was in civilian clothes. She seemed like... Like what, Colonel? General Williams asked coldly. Like a woman who couldn't possibly be important? Like someone whose appearance didn't match your preconceived notions of what a senior military officer should look like? Hartwell's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. The full magnitude of his error was beginning to crash down on him like an avalanche. Every dismissive word, every condescending gesture, every assumption he had made was now replaying in his mind with crystal clarity. General Thornton is here for an unannounced inspection of our readiness protocols, General Williams continued, her voice growing more stern with each word. She specifically requested to observe how our personnel handle unexpected situations and interact with visitors. Congratulations. Colonel, you've just provided her with a perfect example of everything that's wrong with military leadership. The presentation screen flickered to life, showing a live feed from security cameras positioned around the base entrance. There, clearly visible to everyone in the room, was General Thornton still standing near her broken-down car, now surrounded by several junior officers who were treating her with the respect and courtesy that Hartwell had failed to provide. "Oh, God," Hartwell whispered, watching as one of the sergeants offered the general a bottle of water while another worked under the hood of her car. "Oh, my God, what have I done?" "What you've done," came a calm voice from the doorway, "is provide me with the most illuminating 30 minutes I've experienced in recent memory." Every head in the room turned to see General Thornton herself standing in the entrance to the conference room. She had changed out of her civilian clothes and was now wearing her full dress uniform, complete with 4 gleaming stars on her shoulders and ribbons covering most of her chest. The transformation was striking. Gone was any trace of the helpless civilian woman, replaced by someone who radiated authority and command presence. Hartwell tried to stand at attention, but his legs seemed to have turned to jelly. The room spun slightly as the full reality of his situation hit him. He had spent the better part of an hour lecturing a 4-star general about military protocol, dismissing her concerns, mocking her credentials, and treating her like an annoying inconvenience. "General Thornton, ma'am," he managed to croak out. I didn't realize, I had no idea." "No, you didn't," General Thornton agreed calmly, walking into the room with measured steps. "And that, Colonel, is precisely the problem. You didn't realize because you didn't want to realize. You had already decided who I was based on my appearance and your own assumptions, and nothing I could have said or done would have changed your mind." She moved to the front of the room, and every officer present, except for Hartwell, who was still struggling to maintain his balance, snapped to attention. Her presence filled the space in a way that made it clear why she had achieved such a high rank, despite the barriers that had historically existed for women in the military. "Let me share some observations from my impromptu field research this morning," General Thornton began, her voice carrying easily through the room. "I encountered a senior officer who demonstrated a complete lack of situational awareness, made multiple assumptions based solely on gender and appearance, showed no curiosity about gathering additional information before making decisions, displayed a condescending attitude toward someone he perceived as inferior, and completely failed to follow basic protocols for verifying credentials." Each point hit Hartwell like a separate bullet. He could feel his career crumbling around him with each word. "Furthermore," the general continued, "this officer demonstrated a concerning pattern of dismissing input from subordinates, showed no interest in de-escalating a situation that was clearly making others uncomfortable, and revealed significant prejudices about civilian contractors and military dependents." General Williams stepped forward. "Ma'am, I want to assure you that Colonel Hartwell's behavior does not represent the standards we maintain here at Fort Richardson." "Actually, General Williams, I think it represents exactly the standards that need to be addressed," General Thornton replied. "This wasn't an isolated incident of poor judgment. This was a comprehensive demonstration of leadership failure that has clearly been developing over time." She turned her attention directly to Hartwell, who was now visibly sweating despite the cool morning air. "Colonel, during our conversation, you told me about your 23 years of service. You talked about your combat experience, your leadership record, and your pride in your accomplishments. All of that is admirable, and I don't want to diminish your service to our country." For a brief moment, Hartwell felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she would understand. Perhaps this could be explained away as a simple misunderstanding. However, General Thornton continued, and that hope died instantly. Those same 23 years should have taught you the importance of treating every person with respect, regardless of their apparent status. Your experience should have shown you the value of gathering information before making decisions. Your leadership training should have emphasized the importance of maintaining professionalism even when you're frustrated or dealing with unexpected situations. The room was so quiet that the only sound was the gentle hum of the air conditioning system. Hartwell stood frozen in place, knowing that anything he said at this point would only make things worse. "I'm particularly concerned," the general went on, "about your comments regarding Pentagon officials and senior leadership. You expressed significant disdain for those who haven't served in combat roles, dismissing them as desk jockeys who live in a world of theories and policies. This suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of how the military operates at strategic levels." General Thornton moved closer to Hartwell, her stars catching the light from the fluorescent fixtures above. "For your information, Colonel, I have 3 combat deployments under my belt, including 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. I've commanded everything from platoons to divisions. I've made those split-second decisions you talked about, and I've had to live with the consequences. But I've also learned that strategic thinking and policy development are just as crucial to our mission as tactical excellence." The irony was overwhelming. Hartwell had spent the morning lecturing a 4-star general about military experience while demonstrating his complete ignorance of her background and qualifications. "General," Hartwell finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper, "I owe you an apology that I can't even begin to articulate. There's no excuse for my behavior, and I take full responsibility for my actions." General Thornton studied him for a long moment. "Colonel, your apology is noted, but this situation goes well beyond personal offense. Your behavior this morning demonstrated patterns that suggest significant problems with your fitness for command. Those problems have implications for every soldier under your authority." She turned to address the room as a whole. "Leadership isn't about rank or position. It's about character, judgment, and the ability to treat all people with dignity and respect. When we fail in these areas, we not only dishonor ourselves, but we damage the reputation and effectiveness of the entire military." The general's words hung in the air like a final verdict. Everyone in the room understood that they had just witnessed the end of Colonel Marcus Hartwell's military career. His 23 years of service, his combat decorations, his pride in his accomplishments, all of it had been undone by 30 minutes of arrogance, prejudice, and poor judgment. As General Thornton prepared to leave the room, she paused near the door and looked back at Hartwell one final time. "Colonel, I hope you'll use this experience to reflect on the difference between wearing authority and earning it. The military needs leaders who understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not putting them down." With that, she was gone, leaving behind a room full of officers who would never forget the day they witnessed a master class in both leadership and its complete absence. Hartwell remained standing in place, staring at the spot where she had been, finally understanding that the woman he had mocked and dismissed had indeed outranked him by light years. not just in position, but in character, wisdom, and every quality that truly mattered in military leadership.